Can you claim being Black? Can you claim having Black ancestors? So when you take a DNA test and you see, 5, 10%, maybe even 2% West African showing up, when you're asking yourself, what do I do with that? You're asking a historical question. You're asking a political question. Should white people claim their Black heritage? If you've taken a DNA test, or maybe you know somebody who has, maybe there was a percentage in it that you didn't expect. Maybe it was really small. Maybe it was only like 4 or 5%. Maybe it was bigger than that. And a question maybe came up, what am I supposed to do with this result? If you have asked yourself that question after taking a DNA test, or you've watched somebody else take it, or you've been in a Facebook group or YouTube comment section, you've been on Reddit, this question about what do I do with this percentage, it's actually older than taking DNA tests. It's actually older than the United States. People have been asking a version of this question for over 400 years. So today we're going to walk through what the records actually say about who got counted as what and why, and what that will mean for people like us who are on the other side of history taking these DNA tests. And we're going to look at 3 lives where racial classification changed across that person's lifetime. One of those lives is someone in my own family. So by the end of this episode, I hope that you'll have a clearer sense about what it means to even ask, can I claim something? Hi, I'm Danielle Romero. Thank you so much for being with me here on my channel, where we talk about American identity and family stories. And if you want to support this work, the place to do it is on Patreon, patreon.com/NYTN. Patrons get every episode early. I post behind the scenes stuff. We chat. It's a really awesome community. You can also send me a coffee or a little message, and you can scan this QR code right here. So before we can talk about whether or not anyone can claim anything, can you claim being Black? Can you claim having Black ancestors? We have to talk about how these categories got made in the first place. Because the categories didn't just fall out of the sky. In 1662, 1662, this is a long time ago, the Virginia Colonial Assembly passed a law called Partus Sequitur Ventrum. The Latin means the status of the child follows the womb. Okay, so what this law did in plain English was establish that if a woman was enslaved, her children would be enslaved, regardless of who the father was. And there was a good reason for this, according to them. The law existed because white men were fathering children with enslaved women, and so the colony needed a rule that would keep those children inside the labor system. So the legal category of Black became in part a property category. It was a way of deciding who could be owned. Now, if we move forward to Louisiana, which is the part of the country I work the most in because of my Creole heritage there, under French and Spanish rule, Louisiana had developed a 3-tiered racial system rather than a 2-tiered one. So they had enslaved people, they had white people, and then there was this recognized middle category that was the free people of color. These were often property owners, business owners, and in some cases they were slaveholders themselves. They might even go to mass at the same cathedral as their white neighbor. But when the United States bought Louisiana in 1803, that 3-tier system started to come apart because the American legal tradition had only room for 2 categories. Over the next 100 years, the federal census kept trying to manage this in-between with new labels. Mulatto entered the census in 1850. Then the quadroon and octoroon were added to the chat in 1890. And by 1930, all of these categories got folded into one, Black. I've done a lot of videos on this, but that is the only thing the census wanted to record about anyone with any African ancestry at this point. The reason the census did that was because almost every southern state had codified what historians now call the one-drop rule in 1910s and 1920s. This is during Jim Crow South. And a man named Walter Plecker in Virginia and the eugenics movement surrounding him were involved in this. So Plecker ran the Virginia Bureau of Vital Statistics. He wrote the Racial Integrity Act of 1924. I've done a video on that, which made it illegal for anyone in Virginia with a traceable Native or African ancestry to be classified as white on the birth certificate. I wouldn't be classified as white on the birth certificate. We're going back to what counts. Well, in 1924, if there had been DNA tests and you came up with 4 or 5% African or West African ancestry, you would be classified as colored or Black. So Walter Plecker spent the next 20 years personally reclassifying families, destroying records, writing letters to midwives instructing them not to record Native American identity, basically corralling people into this colored or black category. And the reason was to prevent white women from having children with non-white men. So hold on to that, because we're going to come back to the question of who can claim black heritage. What does it mean if you have some black show up on your Ancestry DNA test? So I want to walk through 3 people whose racial classifications were contested or changed during their lifetime. And these are people who could not have taken DNA tests, but we're going to kind of just throw ourselves into the historical context. The records on these are real. So 1, Homer Plessy. You may have heard of him, at least remember hearing Plessy versus Ferguson when you were in 8th or 9th grade history. Plessy was born in New Orleans in 1858. He was Creole, French-speaking, and the descendant on his mother's side of free people of color going back to generations. This is very much like my mom's side of the family. By blood, in the way that the United States of America counts in blood, he was 7/8 white and 1/8 black. Okay, again, no DNA test, but they're kind of going by records and your ancestors and all of that. In 1892, Plessy boarded a whites-only railroad car on the East Louisiana Railway. He had been recruited by a New Orleans civil rights group, specifically because he could pass for white. So there was this kind of like a setup. They're like, okay, we're about to prove a point here. The whole point of this test case was to show the absurdity of the law by putting someone in the whites-only railroad car who the conductor wouldn't have flagged on sight by just looking at him. So Plessy then revealed to the conductor that he was colored, and so the conductor had him arrested for being black on a white car, but he wouldn't have known if he wasn't told. So then this case goes all the way to the Supreme Court in 1896. This is Plessy versus Ferguson. This is the case that gave us the phrase separate but equal. This also gave us legal Jim Crow for the next 58 years. And the man at the center of the case looked white, but he lived in a Creole community where the categories were never as clean as the state of Louisiana wanted them to be, and the state had to insist on a 1/8 rule in order to make this conviction stick. So they had to say, okay, if you're this much, then you're black, then you're colored, okay? So if he had taken the DNA test and showed 1/8, I'll have to do the calculation when I'm editing what that percentage is, but it's not a big percentage. So the point of telling you about Homer Plessy is this. The state had to work hard to keep him on the colored side of the line. That is what the line is made of. It's made of government effort. Okay. Person number 2, Susie Gillery Fipps. Weird thing about this, she's actually a distant cousin of mine. Susie Fipps was a white-presenting Louisiana woman in her 40s who in 1977, so now we're in modern times, 1977, she applied for a passport. She had been married twice, both times to legally white men. She had grown up white in her own understanding, although people dispute this. But when she went to get her birth certificate and apply for the passport, the certificate said colored. She says she had never known she was colored. Her parents had never told her. And then her sister, who applied for a birth certificate at the same time, got hers without the designation of colored because the rules at the parish office were being applied inconsistently from clerk to clerk. Like if they didn't know and they're just looking at you and they're making a judgment, and that becomes your legal identity. So Fipps sued the state of Louisiana to have her racial classification changed. So during the trial, the state of Louisiana presented its evidence. Her great-great-great-great-great-grandmother had been an enslaved African woman named Margarita, who was owned by a French planter named Gillery in the 1760s. So at this point, they're like, okay, here's our proof. We actually did her ancestry work for her. Obviously, there was not a DNA test, but they did her family tree. And so under Louisiana's then existing law, which required a person to be less than 1/32 African in order to be classified as white on birth certificate, Fipps was legally colored. I mean, I would be legally colored under the 1/8. Under 1/32 is like, we're digging deep, okay? So she lost the case in 1982. The 1/32 rule was upheld, and it was not until 1983, after the Fipps case made national news, that the Louisiana legislature finally repealed this statute and allowed parents to designate the race of their own children on birth certificates. Okay, we're gonna go to one more person. So again, according to the law, the percentage is extremely low for what counts as claiming black ancestry. Actually, you are black. Actually, you are colored. Okay, Third person, my great-grandmother, Lola Perot. I have done a docuseries digging into her life on this channel. I would love for you to watch it if you hadn't. She was born in 1900 in Camp D, Louisiana, part of the Cane River Creole community. It's a little bit of a mouthful, Cane River Creole community. And if you have followed my channel for any length of time, you have heard me say her name. The Finding Lola series exists because the records on Lola told a million different stories about who she was, especially kind of contradicting her own story about who she was. On the 1910 census, when she was 9 years old, her family was recorded as mulatto in Louisiana. But previously, in the other censuses, her parents were alternately listed as Black on the census or mulatto, sometimes Mexican. She married my great-grandfather, who was white, and as a woman of color at the time, this was against the law. They ended up moving to New York. And my grandmother's birth certificate, I don't think I have, but I have my great-uncle's, and his is listed as colored, even though he was born in New York in the 1930s. Lola's grandparents, my great-great-grandparents, in earlier documents appeared in multiple classifications across multiple documents. It's just constantly changing. This isn't unusual for Creole families in particular. Melungeon families in Appalachia, Redbone communities, these are all communities that my family is a part of. The records will contradict each other because the categories were never stable in the first place. The categories were political instruments and they were being adjusted to suit political needs. So when you take a DNA test and you see, 5, 10%, maybe even 2% West African showing up, when you're asking yourself, what do I do with that? You're asking a historical question. You're asking a political question. So let's come back to the question that we started with. Should white people claim their Black heritage? The question itself, it's assuming that there is this stable category called white and this stable category called Black, and you can kind of just reach across. But the three lives that I just walked you through are evidence that these categories were never stable. White has not always meant the same thing. Black has not always meant the same thing. And that border between white and Black has been drawn and redrawn a million times by different people for all kinds of reasons. Most of them bad. Probably all of the reasons bad. So here's what I think the honest answer is. If you've taken a DNA test, you've identified as white, and you see African heritage. This happened with my family. We've had a lot of discussions about this. The first part is this. If your tree, like mine, shows African or indigenous ancestors, these people are part of who you are. They're part of who I am. And acknowledging them is honest. I'm not going to pretend that they're not in my family tree. If you wouldn't want Walter Plecker erasing your ancestors from the record, you shouldn't erase them either. If they're there, right? Say their names, find their photographs, pull out their census records, learn their lives, their stories. But the second part is this other thing. Acknowledging an ancestor is not the same as claiming their identity. Identity is shaped by your lived experience, how the world has read you and treated you, maybe what languages were spoken in the kitchen. A person who has lived a white life in America has not had the same experiences as being read as Black in America. And I think trying to claim a different experience than the one that you've grown up with would be a misrepresentation, right? It's like you didn't grow up with that experience, even if your records support that ancestry. I have enslaved ancestors. I had enslaved African ancestors. I've actually traced some of my ancestors all the way to crossing the Middle Passage. And so this is part of my family story. However, I didn't grow up knowing about it. I didn't grow up in that being my home culture. The records give you your ancestors, but they don't give you your identity. Your identity is something else, and that's your experience. Like I said, my great uncle, he shared a lot of his experiences. His records are listed as colored, and other family members who had different experiences that came out lighter looking, their records were listed as white. They had different experiences, same family, siblings even. While I love researching the diversity in my family story and understanding the implications for American history in that, what I can't do, what I really try not to do, is to collapse my great-grandmother's experience, for example, into my own. The Fipps case matters here too, because most people remember it as a case of a woman who they said she didn't want to be Black. What's interesting is I wonder, she's insisting her ancestor is one thing, but her identity is another. Maybe these are two different things, and that the state had collapsed her identity and her ancestor in a way that she had never consented to. Maybe both things can be true at the same time. Your ancestor is Black, maybe Fipps is white. The records show one thing, your life shows the other. And I think genealogy done well is okay sitting in that space. So this is what I'll leave you with. Every contested DNA result, every uncomfortable Thanksgiving conversation I've had them about what the family is, or really every Facebook group fight about authenticity is in some ways the residue of the laws that no longer exist, but we're all still affected by, still living inside that. I think there's a bigger question that we should be asking. What does it mean to be in a country where the categories that we use for ourselves were written by people who were trying to keep us apart? How much of who we think we are is just what the state needed us to be in maybe 1924 or 1983 or the year your grandmother filled out her marriage license? If your family tree has surprised you like mine has surprised me, the work in front of you is to find the people in your records and tell their stories honestly. That is what they earned. That is what they were not given in their own time, but you can give it to them now. So if you want to do that work and you don't know where to start, I would love to have you join me over at Patreon. It's a really fun community. We have a little chat going on the side and people just kind of sharing their experiences and kind of having some back and forth. So I'd love to have you join me over there at patreon.com/NYTN. Otherwise, let me know what you think and we'll talk soon.